World War II left behind countless untold stories. Acts of heroism buried beneath rubble, missions erased by the fog of war, and soldiers who vanished without a trace. Among the millions who fought across Europe and the Pacific, 5 American servicemen stand out, not only for their courage but for the mystery that followed their final moments. Their stories form a haunting mosaic of bravery, duty, and disappearance. By mid-1944, the Allied advance in Europe was gaining momentum. After the D-Day landings, paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division became the tip of the spear, pushing through occupied France and into the heart of Nazi resistance. They were young, fearless, and carried more than weapons. They bore the weight of the free world's hopes. One of them was Private James "Jimmy" Rowe, a 23-year-old paratrooper from Ohio, known for his quick wit and unwavering loyalty. Operation Market Garden began on September 17, 1944, a bold but risky Allied plan to seize key bridges in the Netherlands and open a route into Germany. Rowe's unit, part of the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment, jumped into the skies over Eindhoven amid intense flak. The operation was chaos from the start: scattered drops, lost equipment, and deadly German counterattacks. Yet Rowe's platoon pressed on, tasked with holding a small bridge across the Wilhelmina Canal. For 2 days, they fought off waves of German infantry and armored vehicles. Rowe, manning a Browning automatic rifle, was last seen covering his squad's retreat as mortar shells rained down. Rowe stayed behind to buy us time, recalled Sergeant Paul Kessler in a 1946 debriefing. When we made it across the bridge, he wasn't there. The bridge was gone too. When Allied reinforcements arrived days later, they found only scorched debris and a single helmet marked R3142, Rowe's serial number. In the aftermath, Rowe was declared missing in action. The chaos of Market Garden left thousands unaccounted for, but Rowe's disappearance drew particular attention due to eyewitness reports. A Dutch civilian claimed to have seen an American soldier captured near the canal and taken north by an SS patrol. Yet no German records mentioned him, and no grave was ever found. In the years following the war, the US Army's Graves Registration Service scoured the area, but the ground yielded no answers. Only shell fragments and the remnants of hastily dug foxholes. The story of Market Garden itself ended in disappointment. The bold plan to secure a swift path into Germany collapsed under fierce resistance. The bridges at Arnhem fell back into German hands, and the Allies suffered over 17,000 casualties. Rowe's fate became one more unresolved thread in that costly gamble. Historians who revisited the battle decades later discovered fragments of wartime radio transmissions, garbled messages mentioning one man holding position near the Eindhoven Bridge on September 19th. Was it Rowe, or one of the countless soldiers whose last transmissions vanished into static? No one could be sure. Modern-day searches by Dutch historians and recovery teams have tried to retrace his final moments using metal detectors, archival maps, and even eyewitness descendants. Yet the soil yields silence. Only the bridge, rebuilt long after the war, stands as a memorial to those who never returned. Private James. Rowe's story represents the countless paratroopers who fought not only against an enemy, but against the unknown. His courage bought his unit the time they needed to escape, saving lives that would continue the fight into Germany. But his own story was swallowed by the chaos he helped contain. To this day, his name remains engraved on the tablets of the missing at the Netherlands American Cemetery in Margraten. Visitors sometimes leave a single airborne patch beneath his nameplate, a quiet salute to a man who disappeared holding his ground. As historians look back on Operation Market Garden, Rowe's disappearance continues to haunt the narrative of the war's most daring airborne assault. Was he captured and executed in secret? Did he perish in the river's current? His body carried away before the recovery teams arrived? The truth remains uncertain, lost like so many in the shifting tides of war. What is certain, however, is that Rowe's courage stood as tall as the bridge he defended. His final act, choosing to stand when retreat was an option, embodies the silent bravery of those who fought not for recognition, but for the man beside them. And so begins our journey. 5 soldiers, 5 stories, united by valor and bound by disappearance. The first vanished at a bridge in the Netherlands. The next would disappear in the shadow of Germany's steel defenses. And his mystery would only deepen the question. How could the bravest simply vanish in plain sight? By early 1945, The European front was a frozen wasteland of steel, mud, and exhaustion. The Allies had broken through Normandy, crossed France, and now faced the formidable Siegfried Line, Germany's last major defensive barrier. Stretching from the Netherlands to Switzerland, it was a vast network of bunkers, tank traps, and minefields. Every advance came at a terrible cost. Among those pressing forward was Corporal David Morales, a tank gunner in the 3rd Armored Division, known to his comrades as Hell on Wheels. Morales was born in San Antonio, Texas, the son of Mexican immigrants. He enlisted in 1942, driven by both duty and a deep belief that freedom was worth defending. By 1945, he was a battle-hardened veteran, his unit having fought through the hedgerows of Normandy and the streets of Aachen. On February 8th, the division prepared for a push near the town of Hurtgen, a name that already sent shivers down the spine of Allied troops. The dense forest had swallowed thousands in one of the war's most brutal battles, and now Morales' crew was ordered to support infantry clearing operations at the edge of that same forest. Their Sherman tank, call sign Able 6, rolled forward at dawn under freezing rain. The terrain was treacherous, mud clogged the treads, and German 80 mm guns waited in the fog. Visibility was nothing, wrote Lieutenant Frank Doyle, Morales' platoon leader, in a post-war account. You could hear the shells before you could see the enemy. Within hours, radio communications became spotty, and one by one, tanks began to fall silent. Then, Morales' voice crackled over the radio. "We're hit. Turret jammed. Taking fire from the left." Those were the last words anyone heard from Able 6. When the smoke cleared the next morning, infantry scouts located the wreck of Morales' tank, burned out, half buried in the mud, its turret blown open. But no crew, no bodies. The hatches were open, as if they had escaped or been taken. Dog tags belonging to the driver and loader were found nearby, but not Morales's. For the US Army, it became an immediate MIA case. The 3rd Armored's after-action report noted simply, "Tank Able 6 destroyed by direct artillery fire, crew missing, presumed KIA." Yet rumours soon began circulating among the division. A captured German sergeant claimed that an American tank crew had been taken prisoner near the same area that day. One of them, a gunner with dark hair and a Texas accent. The description fit Morales perfectly. But post-war prisoner lists from German archives showed no record of him. Not in Stalag 9B, nor in any of the camps liberated by US forces in 1945. He had vanished from both sides of the war. Years later, a U.S. military investigator uncovered a field diary from a German officer stationed near Hurtgen. One cryptic entry read, "Enemy crew taken, gunner wounded, spoke little, sent to Aachen. No names, no unit designations. Just that line, scrawled in fading ink. The officer was killed weeks later, and the diary ended abruptly." The Hurtgen forest itself remains a vast, eerie time capsule of WWII. Even today, local authorities occasionally uncover remnants of war. Helmets, insignia, fragments of steel. In 1998, amateur historians discovered the partial chassis of a Sherman tank matching the Able 6 serial number. But again, no human remains were found nearby. Only the melted frame of a Browning .50 caliber gun and a spent shell casing etched with the initials D.M. Was Morales captured and executed by retreating SS units? Did he try to escape through the forest and succumb to the cold? The answers are buried somewhere in that haunted woodland, where even trees still bear the scars of artillery fire. To those who served with him, Morales symbolized the quiet defiance of the American tankers. He was known to hum swing tunes through the intercom between battles, a small act of normalcy amid chaos. Morales wasn't afraid of anything, a surviving crewman once said, but the war, it had a way of swallowing the brave ones whole. In 1951, the US Army officially changed his status from missing in action to presumed dead. His name was engraved on the walls of the missing at Henri Chapelle American Cemetery in Belgium. Beneath it, visitors often leave a tank shell casing, a simple reminder of a man who fought in iron and disappeared in fire. Even today, battlefield archaeologists search the Hurtgen for clues. A single personal artifact, a ring, a watch, a piece of identification, could close the chapter, but each excavation ends the same way. A void where a man should be. Corporal David Morales' story stands as the embodiment of wartime uncertainty, of courage met by the unrelenting chaos of battle. His disappearance left unanswered questions that linger like echoes in the forest mist. As winter turned to spring and the Siegfried Line finally cracked under Allied pressure, new battles loomed further east, across rivers, jungles, and mountains. For the next man in our story, the war's mystery would shift thousands of miles, away into the unforgiving jungles of the Pacific, where soldiers vanished not into fog, but into green silence. The Pacific Theater was a world apart from the trenches of Europe, humid, brutal, and unforgiving. There, the war was fought not just against an enemy, but against nature itself. By early 1945, the US had turned its focus to the Philippines, determined to drive out the last remnants of Japanese control. In that campaign, men disappeared without a trace in the dense jungles, their fates swallowed by terrain so hostile that entire patrols could vanish overnight. One of them was Sergeant William Bill Carter, a reconnaissance leader whose final mission became one of the most perplexing disappearances of the Pacific War. Carter was a veteran of the 25th Infantry Division, known as the Tropic Lightning. Born in Kansas and raised during the Dust Bowl, he was accustomed to hardship. His leadership and calm under fire earned him the respect of his men and the attention of his commanders. On February 12, 1945, during the final stages of the Luzon campaign, Carter received orders to lead a 6-man reconnaissance team deep into Japanese-held territory near the Sierra Madre mountain range. Their objective? Locate an enemy artillery position harassing US supply lines and radio back coordinates for an airstrike. Before dawn, Carter's squad set out. Radio operator Private Ellis, Scout Corporal Tanaka, and 3 riflemen. They carried limited rations, a hand-cranked radio, and machetes to cut through the thick jungle. For the first 2 days, radio transmissions were clear. On February 14th, Carter reported spotting a small Japanese bivouac and observing troop movements. His final message, logged at 1840 hours, was terse and urgent. Enemy movement east of ridge. Repositioning. Static interference. The line went dead mid-sentence. No further contact was ever made. When they failed to report back, search parties from the 25th Division combed the area for a week. They found signs of a struggle, torn foliage, a broken rifle stock, and an empty ration tin. Nearby lay the shattered remains of a radio antenna. There were no bodies, no boot prints leading away, and no signs of burial. It was as if the team had simply dissolved into the jungle. Japanese records recovered after the war offered no mention of captured Americans in that sector. The Imperial Army was itself in disarray, fragmented, retreating, and often cut off from command. Yet one curious clue emerged from a local source. A Filipino farmer reported seeing a group of foreign soldiers moving toward a mountain ravine days after the squad's disappearance. They looked exhausted and carried their wounded, he said, before vanishing into the dense canopy. For decades, the story of Sergeant Carter's patrol remained one of the Philippines' enduring wartime mysteries. The official report, filed in March 1945, described the incident as Reconnaissance Team Alpha, status unknown, presumed lost in enemy territory. But speculation persisted. Some believed Carter's team may have stumbled upon a hidden Japanese base and been executed in secret. Others suggested they were caught in friendly fire from US air raids that later targeted the area. Neither theory was ever substantiated. In the 1960s, American and Filipino veterans returned to Luzon for recovery efforts. Among them was Sergeant Tanaka's younger brother, himself a Korean War veteran. Guided by local villagers, the team found fragments of US equipment in a ravine near Mount Balungao, including a rusted M1 rifle and a single dog tag reading E.J. Ellis, 3921576. The discovery confirmed the team's path, but deepened the mystery. Why had they left their position? Why was only Ellis's tag recovered? Decades later, historians uncovered a fascinating twist. Wartime intelligence files showed that US forces had intercepted Japanese radio, chatter in mid-February 1945 mentioning enemy scouts. In the High Ridge, neutralized, the exact coordinates matched Carter's last known location. Yet no follow-up was ever made, likely lost in the chaos of the final Luzon offensive. Today, the Philippine jungle has reclaimed much of the battlefield. Researchers from the Defense WWII Accounting Agency, DPAA, still conduct expeditions in the region, guided by declassified wartime maps and interviews with surviving locals. Each search brings the same eerie silence. The jungle yields relics, but no remains. It is as though the forest itself refuses to surrender its secrets. Carter's commanding officer once described him as a man of conviction, quiet, steady but never reckless. His final act, leading his men deep into enemy ground, embodies the courage of countless patrol leaders who walked into uncertainty so others would not have to. His family, like so many others, received a letter marked "Missing in Action," the words every wartime parent dreaded. His mother kept his dog tag replica on the mantle for decades, next to a faded photo of a young soldier smiling in tropical fatigues. The mystery of Sergeant William Carter endures as a symbol of the Pacific War's cruel unpredictability. In Europe, missing soldiers often left wreckage or witnesses. In the jungles of the Pacific, the land itself became the enemy, concealing everything it consumed. As the war in the Pacific raged on, the skies above another front would soon tell their own tale of disappearance. Thousands of feet above the European forests, another American vanished into thin air. Not into jungle mist, but into the cold silence of the clouds. High above the frozen battlefields of Europe, the air war played out with merciless precision. For every triumph in the skies, there were losses that vanished as suddenly as they appeared. Sometimes in a burst of flame, other times into clouds that swallowed whole aircraft. By December 1944, as the Battle of the Bulge engulfed the Ardennes, the US 8th Air Force was engaged in relentless operations to halt the German counteroffensive. Among the men flying these missions was Lieutenant Robert H. Evans, a P-51 Mustang pilot, known for his calm demeanor and deadly accuracy. Evans hailed from Portland, Maine, and had joined the Army Air Forces in 1943. By age 25, he was already a seasoned pilot in the 357th Fighter Group, known as the Yoxford Boys. His Mustang, a sleek P-51D named Margie, bore the painted image of a girl in a red dress, a tribute to his fiancée waiting back home. He had flown escort for bombers over Berlin, strafed trains in France, and survived near misses over enemy flak zones. But his final mission, on December 27, 1944, would be unlike any before. The weather was brutal. Overcast skies, freezing temperatures, and thick fog hugging the ground. At 0930 hours, Evans and his squadron lifted off from Liston Airfield in England, bound for the Ardennes region. Their objective: provide cover for Allied ground forces pushing against German panzer units near Bastogne. Radio logs show Evans' last recorded transmission as calm and routine. Tally on 2 enemy aircraft, moving to engage, at approximately 10,000 feet. His flight encountered heavy flak near the German border. Witnesses later reported seeing Margie take a direct hit to the fuselage. Smoke trailed behind as the plane spiraled out of formation. Lieutenant John Red Kearns, Evans' wingman, described it years later. "She went down slow, like she was gliding. I saw a flash, maybe a parachute, then nothing. Just the cloud cover swallowing her whole." Search teams scoured the region for weeks. Wreckage from multiple downed planes was located, but not Evans's. The only potential clue came from a Belgian farmer near St. Vith, who reported hearing a crash deep in the forest and seeing white silk drifting from the sky. The area was under German control at the time, making recovery impossible. When US forces reclaimed the region weeks later, the snow had melted, but no sign of the plane or pilot remained. Post-war investigation by the Missing Aircrew Office, MACR 2274, listed Evans as MIA. Yet something about the case refused to settle. German Luftwaffe records did not list a downed P-51 matching his serial number. Local civilians claimed to have seen soldiers searching the woods weeks after the crash. German soldiers, carrying shovels and marking trees. Were they recovering wreckage or concealing something else? In 1952, a team from the American Graves Registration Command returned to Belgium to reopen the case. They interviewed a former Wehrmacht officer who had been stationed near the Ardennes. He recalled a captured pilot found injured after parachuting from a P-51 and taken to a field hospital near Prüm. The man died overnight, and his dog tags, illegible from burns, were removed for identification. But when Allied forces liberated the area, no such records were found. The burial logs for that field hospital ended abruptly in late December 1944. The mystery deepened in 1979, when local hikers discovered twisted aluminum fragments deep in the Ardennes forest near the Our River. Serial numbers confirmed they belonged to a P-51D, possibly Margie. No remains were present, only part of a flight glove still bearing the initials RE etched into the leather. It was the first physical trace of Lieutenant Evans in over 3 decades, yet the official conclusion remained unchanged, unrecoverable. What truly happened that winter morning? Did Evans eject successfully, only to die of his injuries in captivity? Or did his aircraft vanish into terrain so dense it concealed its wreck for generations? The Ardennes remains a graveyard of steel and ghosts, hundreds of downed planes still resting beneath layers of earth and forest growth. To the 357th Fighter Group, Evans was more than a missing pilot. He was a symbol of quiet bravery. Letters from his comrades reveal the human toll. He never boasted, never faltered, one wrote. He'd fly through hell if it meant bringing the bombers home. His fiancée, Margaret, the namesake of his aircraft, never remarried. For decades she sent Christmas cards to his last known squadron address, each signed simply, "Until you come home." Modern search teams continue to explore crash sites in the Ardennes using ground-penetrating radar and metal detection surveys. Though fragments of Evans's aircraft have been recovered, the full wreck remains elusive, perhaps buried, perhaps already claimed by the forest. His disappearance adds another piece to the mosaic of valor and mystery that defines the war's hidden side. The war in Europe would soon draw to a close, but its unanswered stories would ripple across generations. As the guns fell silent in May 1945, many families still waited for news that would never arrive. Yet even after the armistice, the world's oceans still held their own secrets. For one final group of soldiers, men at sea, far from home, the story of courage and disappearance would close this haunting circle of World War II's missing heroes. The skies above the Ardennes were only one face of war's uncertainty. Across the vast Atlantic and into the cold expanse of the North Sea, another battle was waged, one of survival, isolation, and the unrelenting power of nature itself. As Europe neared liberation in 1945, the US Navy and Air Corps continued vital supply and patrol missions to keep the Allied war machine alive. Amid those missions, some of the most haunting disappearances occurred not in the chaos of battle, but in the quiet void between continents. One such case was that of Ensign Thomas "Tommy" Hale, a US Navy aviator whose final flight remains one of the enduring mysteries of the closing months of World War II. Hale, just 24, hailed from Chicago and had joined the Naval Air Reserve before the US entered the war. Trained as a pilot for the Grumman TBF Avenger, a torpedo bomber used in both the Atlantic and Pacific, he was assigned to Composite Squadron VC-58, operating from escort carrier USS Block Island. His unit had helped hunt German U-boats along the cold northern sea routes, protecting convoys bound for Britain. By spring of 1945, the German submarine threat was waning but far from gone. Hale's squadron continued to fly long, grueling patrols over the open sea, missions that tested both machine and man. On March 22, 1945, Hale's Avenger, callsign Blue 3, took off from Block Island just after dawn. His orders: conduct a 5-hour anti-submarine sweep west of the Hebrides, near the outer reaches of the British Isles. Weather conditions were deteriorating, with gale-force winds and low cloud ceilings. Despite this, Hale and his 2-man crew, radio man William Peters and gunner James "Red" Lawson, pressed on into the grey horizon. At 0940 hours, the Block Island logged Hale's routine radio check. Sector clear. Visibility poor. Continuing patrol. It was the last transmission ever received from Blue 3. At 10:15 a.m., radar contact was lost. Search aircraft were scrambled within hours, but no wreckage, oil slick, or survivors were found. The North Atlantic was unforgiving, and the Avenger, though sturdy, could not withstand a controlled ditching in such seas. After 48 hours, the search was called off. The official report concluded, presumed lost due to weather. But many aboard the Block Island doubted the simplicity of that explanation. Days later, a British coastal radar station on the Isle of Lewis reported detecting an unidentified aircraft signal matching Blue 3's frequency, more than 90 miles north of its intended route. The contact appeared briefly, then vanished. If it was Hale's Avenger, he had somehow drifted far off course, perhaps disoriented by the storm or mechanical failure. Yet no distress call was ever sent, suggesting something more sudden. Complicating the mystery were German naval records captured after the war. Among them was a U-boat log from U-1305, which recorded engaging an enemy aircraft on March 22nd at coordinates eerily close to Hale's last known position. The U-boat commander noted possible hit before diving. Could Hale's Avenger have been struck and gone down in flames? Or was the report simply another fog of war confusion during the dying days of the Atlantic campaign? Neither theory could be confirmed. In 1953, a Norwegian trawler recovered fragments of aluminum wreckage near the same area, twisted and scarred by impact. The metal bore faint remnants of US Navy paint. Forensic analysis decades later could not conclusively link it to Hale's aircraft, but it remains one of the few tangible clues ever found. The ocean had likely claimed whatever secrets it held within hours of the crash. For Hale's family, closure never came. His mother, Ellen, kept his Navy wings framed above the fireplace until her death in 1980. She refused to believe her son had simply vanished. "The sea doesn't take everything," she once told a local reporter. "Somewhere, there's a piece of him waiting to be found." Her faith mirrored the quiet hope of thousands of families who never received the telegrams confirming life or death. Only those haunting words. Missing in action. Modern oceanographic surveys have searched the North Atlantic for lost WWII aircraft using sonar mapping. In 2014, a British exploration team discovered the wreck of a Grumman Avenger roughly 70 miles from Hale's patrol zone. Its condition matched an emergency ditching rather than a shoot-down. However, serial numbers had corroded beyond legibility. Without definitive proof, the mystery remains suspended between probability and hope. Historians studying wartime disappearance cases like Hale's point to the extreme conditions aviators faced. Poor navigation instruments, sudden storms, and the psychological toll of isolation. Yet in each story, there is something deeper. A quiet defiance in men who accepted that each flight could be their last. Hale's final mission was routine by official standards, but within that routine lay the same courage that defined every man who dared the skies over hostile waters. His name is etched on the tablets of the missing at the Cambridge American Cemetery in England. Beneath it, visitors sometimes leave small paper planes or folded Navy flags, tributes from modern airmen who understand that flying into the unknown has always carried a price. As the war drew to an end, the stories of Hale, Evans, Carter, Morales, and Rowe began to fade into military archives and family lore. Yet each of their disappearances, separated by oceans and continents, shared the same haunting thread: courage followed by silence. And as the guns of World War II finally fell quiet in 1945, the mysteries of those who vanished remained. Reminders that even in victory, some battles never truly end. When the guns of World War II finally fell silent in 1945, the world exhaled. But the silence that followed was heavy. Across continents, families waited for telegrams that would never come. For every soldier who returned home, another remained unaccounted for, lost to the fields, forests, seas, and skies that had swallowed entire generations. Among those names were 5 men whose courage was beyond question, but whose fates were never recorded. Together, their stories form a haunting tapestry of valor and mystery. 5 of the most courageous US soldiers who vanished in combat. In the decades that followed, governments created vast operations to find them. Teams of historians, archaeologists, and forensic experts scouring former battlefields. The American Graves Registration Command, and later the Defense WWII Accounting Agency, dedicated entire divisions to locating the missing. Their mission remains unchanged: to bring the fallen home, no matter how much time has passed. Yet for many, including Private James Rowe of Eindhoven, Corporal David Morales of the Siegfried Line, Sergeant William Carter in Luzon, Lieutenant Robert Evans over the Ardennes, and Ensign Thomas Hale in the North Atlantic, the trail has remained cold. Each disappearance tells a different story of war's unpredictability. Rowe, the paratrooper who vanished defending a bridge in the Netherlands, represents those swallowed by chaos on the ground. Morales, the tank gunner whose vehicle burned on the Siegfried Line, embodies the armored division's courage and cost. Carter's disappearance in the Philippines mirrors the impenetrable mystery of jungle warfare, where terrain and enemy blended into one. Evans, the Mustang pilot lost in the fog over Europe, stands for those who fought their battles in the clouds, unseen by those below. And Hale's final flight into the North Atlantic reflects the unseen battles that raged across open water. Silent, cold, and absolute. For the families left behind, the war never truly ended. They lived in the long shadow of uncertainty, torn between grief and hope. Many clung to rumors of captured soldiers, fragments of reports, or stories from returning veterans who might have seen someone matching their loved one's description. Across the decades, every clue felt like a lifeline. Letters were written to the War Department, photos exchanged, maps studied. Some even traveled overseas, walking the same ground their sons once did. For many, those pilgrimages became a kind of peace. Historians have since revisited these cases, comparing wartime logs, captured documents, and declassified intelligence files. In some, tantalizing hints emerge. An unmarked grave near the Wilhelmina Canal, a German field diary referencing a captured gunner, an intercepted transmission from Luzon mentioning missing American scouts. But none provide certainty. Time erases evidence. Nature reclaims everything. What remains are fragments, enough to build questions, but never enough to close the story. There's a saying among those who search for the missing: absence is not the same as loss. It captures the cruel paradox faced by the families of Rowe, Morales, Carter, Evans, and Hale. The war ended, but for them, it never truly concluded. The battlefield reports stopped. The telegrams ceased. Yet the question lingered. What really happened? Modern technology offers new hope. Ground-penetrating radar, DNA forensics, and digitized archives have solved cases once thought impossible. Each identification rekindles the mission, that no soldier's sacrifice should be left in uncertainty. But even with science on our side, the Earth remains stubbornly silent in some places. There are still more than 72,000 Americans missing from World War II. For every name carved into a monument or plaque, there is a story, not of disappearance alone, but of courage that defied circumstance. The missing were not forgotten. They are frozen in the moments of their final acts. Rowe holding his bridge, Morales manning his cannon, Carter leading his patrol, Evans diving through clouds, Hale navigating a stormy sky. Each faced the unimaginable, and did so without hesitation. Their absence is part of the war's unfinished narrative, a reminder that victory carries both triumph and sorrow. It asks us to remember not only how the war was won, but what and who was lost in the process. Today, when visitors walk through the American cemeteries scattered across Europe and the Pacific, Magraten, Henri Chapelle, Manila, Cambridge, they pass rows of white crosses and walls inscribed with names. Among them are those of these 5 men. Beneath their names, the words, "Here rests in honored glory." A comrade in arms known but to God stand as both epitaph and challenge. A promise to keep searching, to keep remembering. In the end, the mystery of these 5 courageous US soldiers is not one of tragedy, but of endurance. Their stories live on not through the certainty of death, but through the persistence of memory. Their courage, unrecorded by history's end, continues to echo through time, a testament to all who disappeared, defending the world's fragile hope for freedom. And though the war ended more than 80 years ago, their watch has never truly ceased. Somewhere, in forest soil, ocean depths, or mountain ravines, they remain, silent witnesses to a world they helped shape, and a freedom they never lived to see.